Senate reform continues to dominate the agenda on Parliament Hill. Global News has been trying to get answers about senators and their expenses, but information has not been easy to come by. As our Ottawa Bureau Chief Jacques Bourbeau tells us, one senator says there are good reasons to keep some of that information from the public eye.
It's a pretty simple rule. Senators have to live in the province they represent. But there are questions whether some senators like Pam Wallen and Mike Duffy might be breaking this rule. So the Senate is asking its members to prove where they live by showing their health cards and driver's license. Once all the evidence is in, the big question is, what will the Senate do to those who have been breaking the rules? Today on the West Block with Tom Clark, the Liberal leader in the Senate says the consequences will be severe.
If you defraud the public purse, that's a criminal offense. If you make a false declaration, that's a criminal offense.
On this, the Liberals and the Conservatives are singing the same tune.
You swear that this to be true, so not telling the truth is committing perjury, or the same as committing perjury, and leaving you open to a criminal offense.
But it's not just their living arrangements, it's their spending habits as well. Habits the Senate does its best to hide. For example, we're not allowed to know when and where senators travel or why taxpayers were asked to pay for each trip. Senator Cowan says there's a good reason for that.
There are people who will meet with me and perhaps with you, who wouldn't want that known that they were doing that, particularly in this environment where there's a bit of a, put it mildly, a bit of a chill in the air.
The Senate is also dealing with another scandal, Senator Patrick Brazeau and his assault charges. He's been temporarily suspended, but Senator Cowan says if Brazeau is cleared, he can come back.
So if he's cleared, you say, why not bring Patrick Brazeau back in?
Absolutely.
But other questions still surround Brazeau, like whether he falsely claimed thousands of dollars in housing expenses.
There was red flags about this guy from day one. Real serious questions about, allegations of sexual harassment, non-payment of child support, questions of financial problems.
Right now, the Senate is awash in audits and investigations. But in the end, this same institution will be the one to decide who's guilty and how they will be punished. Jacques Bourbeau, Global News, Ottawa.
Joining us now for more on this is our chief political correspondent and host of the West Block, Tom Clark. Tom, the NDP, the official opposition, saying the Senate is broken and needs to be fixed, but that hasn't always been their position.
Well, you know, time was when the NDP position on the Senate was absolutely crystal clear, and that was abolish it. But that seems to be changing and changing quickly. The NDP critic for democratic reform, MP Craig Scott, said on the West Block last week that he'd prefer to see Senate reform first, and only if that didn't work, then get rid of it. And by reform, he meant an elected Senate. Well, today, the NDP ethics critic, MP Charlie Angus, said he'd prefer to see a referendum on the future of the Senate, which would include the options to reform it or to dump it. And he added if the voters wanted an elected Senate, well, then the NDP would honor that. But is this NDP policy? Well, even the NDP aren't sure. Have a listen. Is that an early 2015 election promise? An NDP government would hold a referendum on the future of the Senate?
Well, I can't say exactly what Thomas Mulcair will do when we form government in 2015, but Canadians need to deal with the Senate. It has to be dealt with. It's unacceptable to say, well, they've been there. They're set till as long as they want. They can be convicted criminals. They still get to stay there. Canadians are smarter than that.
And so far, anyway, Thomas Mulcair has not cleared up this confusion.